next speaker is currently a full-time professional learning consultant for Corwin and a teaching clinician. She was previously a bilingual teacher in an elementary school where she taught grades K through 6 for 15 years, as well as a high school special educator, academic coach, coordinator of services for multilingual learners, and administrator. She holds teaching and administrative services credentials in California and earned her master's degree in education from San Diego State University. She led efforts to improve student learning, which resulted in her school earning academic distinction for impacting the lives of students in poverty, living in poverty, becoming a visible learning plus gold certified school, and improving academic language for multilingual learners. She also serves as an advisor to many high school clubs, was the student government advisor, and led students to championships for 10 years in health, occupations, students association competitions. She is dedicated to developing teacher and leadership mindsets on diverse learning populations. Aida is a co-author of PLC Plus, a playbook for instructional leadership. Please join me in welcoming Aida Allen, who will speak on empowering engagement, the triad of clarity, challenge, and student understanding.
Thank you. Let me get my slide here. Good morning. Well, is it still? Yes, it's still morning. I'm glad to be here. I cannot believe the 16th is really already here. So I'm very excited. My name is Aida Allen-Rotell. And this morning, I'm just going to be honest. I feel like I have big shoes to fill after Ken and Nikki. And so I'm okay. I'm not going to be too dramatic about it, but they were pretty wow. I had the pleasure of listening in and wow, they definitely inspired me, got me thinking. And so what I would like to see just from in the chat, what's one thing that is resonating with you from Ken and Dr. Nikki's sessions? Just to get us going. I know I'm the last of the speakers. I know there's a panel, relationships, equity. I love this. What else? What's one thing that is you're thinking about after both of these amazing speakers got off lived experiences? I love that. What else? Equity is a verb. I have that written down. I always take little notes. Empowering. Love that. What else? What is kind of sticky? Yep. That one had designing our spaces so each and every one of us can thrive rather than survive. Oh, good one. So good. Yep. Love it. Love it. Thank you. Yes, what amazing session. So this late morning, we're going to look at the model for engagement by design. I've had the pleasure of working with Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry. I think Nikki talked about their scaffolding book, but we know they have tons of books out there for the past 30 years. And so I've been part of a lot of their work as a practitioner and as a researcher. So I'm really excited that we get to have this opportunity to really talk about how are we accelerating learning. And we know one piece that we talk about is how do we engage students? I'm a believer if kids are just there and we're talking and they're not learning, we really are missing a huge piece. So our learning intentions for today, if you could just read them to yourself in the next 50 minutes, we have lots of good stuff to learn. So this is what we're going to learn together. And you'll know you're successful if you can identify these 3 components needed for student engagement, describe how to use the engagement continuum, and then look at explaining the role of teacher clarity and appropriately challenging assignments are all connected to student engagement. So let's get started. And I want to ask you a question, and you could put thumbs up. You could just say yes, no. If you're really tired, you could put a Y or an N, whatever works for you. Do we have an engagement crisis in our country? I'm not even going to say in our classrooms. Do you think? Yes. Oh, Chrissy was like, yes, Aida. Okay, okay, yes. A lot of us are going with yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, good news. Not good news, but your answer is right. We definitely know we have some engagement situations going on. In the last year, we saw, and this is by Gillis did this study, that student engagement decreases as students go up in grades. And we're going to define engagement in a second, but we know that as kids go up in grade levels, their engagement decreases. And I just want you to think about, I always say why. I always am wondering, why is that happening? Only about a third of employees nationally reported being engaged, and only about 30% of teachers reported being engaged. And so as we think about the work we do today, as I'm talking, it's not about saying, going back and going, only 30% of us are engaged. It's not something like that. But we want to talk about how can we change this narrative and think about how can we get engagement back. And we know, and I loved what Ken said about technology is a part of our world, which is an amazing piece. Do we necessarily use it correctly? Probably not. As he was talking, I was thinking, yep, I know what he's talking about. So as we think of this, if you're a classroom teacher, or if you were a classroom teacher, I'd like you to share, how do you know when your students are engaged? What's one look for when you're in a classroom that you say that student's engaged? What's one look for? Let's see what you got in the chat. Productive struggle. Smiles. Okay. I like a good smile. Okay. Excitement. Okay. They love it. They are participating. Responses. They're active questioning. They don't want to leave the class. Isn't that great, Christian? When you're like, or Kristen, it must be Kristen, sorry. Okay. You're like, time to go. Okay, so I'm going to be 56 years old next week. And I always like to share this story because I got an A- in my chemistry class. So this is in the 80s. And if you're thinking, wow, she is a smarty. No, I am smart in the way that I cheated off of Tom Graber. And so I guarantee that my teacher thought I was engaged because I was turning in the work. I was a nice student. I would do the occasional nod, didn't know what he was talking about. In my mind, I was just thinking, I hope Tom's taking some good notes, right? But in my mind, as a student, I thought I was engaged because I was turning in the work and I was looking successful, right? And so when we think about this piece of engagement, we know there's dimensions to engagement. There's not just one way of looking at it. And you can see by our responses, we had a lot of different ways of looking at it. We have behavioral engagement, right? We follow rules, we complete assignments. To be honest, I call those more teacher pleasing behaviors. Not bad. I'm not saying these are bad things. We also know there's cognitive engagement, right? Desire for challenge, self-regulates. And then there's emotional engagement. And I think that Nikki talked about how we feel, right? Was a big piece and part of her session. And we know that there's dimensions to this piece of engagement. So here's my question for you. Do kids know what it means to be engaged? Do they come to our schools knowing that these are all the pieces of engagement? Yes or no? In the chat, what do you think? No, okay. No. Okay. So here's my thing, but we get frustrated with them, right? We're like, why? Learned helplessness. They never want to, they don't desire challenge, right? They don't want to work in groups. Why? Right? I never have them in groups, but they don't want to work in them, right? We know that engagement is not something we necessarily think kids come to our schools with. And so these are questions for you to think about. Have we taught students how to engage, or do we just expect them to? And someone will say to me, well, I don't think anyone taught me, but something happened, right? I think of myself as a student. Something made me understand. I never desired challenge. It wasn't until I got into college did I understand what that meant. Do we assume students are unmotivated, or do we understand their barriers for engagement? Because we throw that term around a lot, right? Oh, he's unmotivated, and I always want to go, he's 5. We got to figure something out. Um, do we tell students if they are engaged, or do we or do we show students how to monitor their own engagements? And so this is a piece that I think about a lot, because we have in our profession a kind of sometimes the sink or swim mentality. And I know you all don't because you're here on a Saturday. But we really want to think about, what if we did teach kids what it meant to be engaged? And so my big thing is, we need to partner up with students in their educational careers. I don't call it educational journeys, I call it careers, because this is a career. Right? You keep learning, even if you don't go off to post secondary learning, you are still learning in some way or another. And so I believe we have to partner up. And I, I always say, the reason we're so tired at the end of the day is that we do all of the thinking. He needs this. Oh my God, this, right? And we don't have them be part of their careers. And so as we think of this, I want to talk about levels of engagement. And I say this because this is has been the game changer in a lot of schools that I work with, but in my own classroom. I try to be in a classroom at least once a year. This past year, I was this past semester, last semester, I was in a 7th grade class. I teach a period, and people go, how do you do it if you're on the road? We figure it out. I'm very lucky I get to co-teach with Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry. So we figure it out. But this has been a game changer. And when we think of levels of engagement, this is all coming off of Amy Berry's work. She created this continuum of engagement. So I want you to just take a second to look at it. Just kind of check it out. And then in the chat, tell me one thing that you notice. If you don't notice anything, that's okay. But anything that's maybe kind of jumping out, you're thinking about, go ahead and see what you got. Anything that kind of self-assessment. Okay, that's what we're thinking about. Okay, it's a continuum. Yes, it is. I love that. Anything else? As you look at it a little, yep. A lot of kids live in passive engagement space. Mm-hmm. Yep, yep, yep. Participating isn't the final stage. Yes, yes. Every time when I look at this continuum, I always think about, I don't think I, as a student or teacher, even thought about investing and driving. Really, I didn't. I was just happy if they were paying attention, doing work, and responding to questions. That was my criteria. They didn't even know that was my criteria, but that kept me happy. And so, not sure if you've ever truly seen driving. Yep, thank you, Susan. So Amy Berry came up with this. Then the world shut down in March of 2020, which we all know. And then we came back. And we started seeing that engagement was really not happening. And so we started working with some schools. I live in San Diego. We were working with a school district, Chula Vista School District, which is about 10 miles from the border. If you aren't aware, I think if you're in California, you are. And we started talking, and they said, we don't want to start with anything other than, how do we get kids to be engaged? We're not even looking for, the reading program of all. And we just need our kids to be engaged. So of course, Doug Fisher, who's amazing, said, let's see if we teach kids what it means to be engaged. And so we brought this continuum down and we started digging into this. And of course, as you know, teachers always will make things prettier. So you saw from the purple one, we started adding some color to it. And we started thinking, how about if we go into classrooms and talk about this engagement and make kids aware that they are in the driver's seat of their learning. They just need to be taught, and we need to figure out how to do this. And so, teachers, I just got to keep going. So teachers came up with different ways to teach this, but you had to teach it. You just couldn't say, distracted, you're throwing paper. So teachers took on this role. And this is from a classroom, a fourth grade teacher. And so she took it and said, okay, so what does that look like? What is it when someone's disruptive? Mrs. Ortega even shared a time that she was disruptive, but you'll notice that she took every different level and talked about what does this look like? What does it mean to be avoiding? Right. And there's more to than just avoiding. Avoiding might be that something's too hard and I'm going to figure out a way to get out of it. And I don't feel comfortable saying I don't get it. Withdrawing, right? How do why are you daydreaming? Why are you thinking about something else? Right. And so I want to show you a little video. This is a kindergarten teacher. So they took this K through sixth grade in all their elementary schools and they made it work, right? The kindergarten, I'll be very honest, took the disruptive one out, no, the avoiding one out from theirs. I think they're just as five. But I just want you to listen to a 5-year-old talk about what it means when she was withdrawing or when she was in withdrawing. So let's listen.
When I was doing the homework in my class, I was thinking about an apple, eating it like in my eyes, but I just closed them and I was just eating the apple with me.
So in her 5-year-old way, she's telling us she was withdrawing. She was thinking about an apple instead of her learning, which is fantastic, right? It's going to be in a 5-year-old way. So then she went through, not myself, but taught kids what it means to be participating, right? Then we talked about what does it mean to be investing, right? Because investing is a little deeper than just participating, right? Questioning, thinking about why, questioning it beyond just the surface level. Can you tell me more? Can you show me a little more, right? And they modeled it and they talk about it. And then driving, what does that look like? And setting goals, seeking feedback, that self-assessment, right? That metacognition. And what does that look like? And so they took a few weeks, they taught it, and they said, let's try it. And everybody took it on different ways. But we know that kids had a better understanding of what this is. I always like to do a disclaimer. This is not a behavior chart. This isn't 1997 when we had the little clips. That's not what it is. This is for kids. This is for kids to be setting their engagement. And so I wanted you to just see different ways teachers took this on. But I want you to watch a little video. And the video, oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. The video we're going to watch is the fourth grade teacher that kind of taught the kids what being engagement. And again, it really is up to what works for you. This teacher makes sure that every time a lesson's coming up, you can see the students' names. They put their name under where they're going to be. So it's math time. Where are you going to be? It's now language arts time. Where are you going to be? And so I've used it now in middle school and high school, and I'll show you some examples of that. But before I get to that, so what my friend and who we're going to watch, Sarah did was she did a self-assessment of pre, and she said, I want you to be honest. Where do you usually live? when it comes to this engagement assessment. And you'll notice kids were honest, right? Some of them said, I live in avoiding or I live in disruption, and it doesn't mean you're kicked out of the class. How do I get you to just be avoiding? Or how do I take you from avoiding to withdrawing, right? So we know this was very honest at the beginning of doing the self-assessment, and then the post, you will see how kids grew. And it was just what they do in this school or in this classroom. And so if you look, I always like looking at those kids that were towards the avoiding and withdrawing, the growth they show, right? And what we've noticed is not just the growth of being engaged, like being students, but their growth and learning. So what I want us to do is, and then I wanted to show you this. I just got this yesterday. I'm working at a German school, and so they sent me this picture, and I just said I got to share it. So as you think of this, as we think of engagement, I'm showing you lots of different models because then teachers started kind of playing it with it. You can see that they have engaging in the activity, then engaging with peers, right? It's different engagement levels. So I just think it's fantastic how these teachers took it on. So this is my class. And I was doing, this was in actually a ninth grade class, and I had them walk through, and because they're older kids, I gave them, we talked about these different levels, and then they came up with examples and they shared with the class. So these are just different ways of doing it. And these were the posters I used for high school kids. But we had these, I actually had them on their, I have tables, so I had them on their desk and they could just circle which one they're going to be on. And that way I can just be walking around, kind of seeing where they're at, but it kind of holds them accountable and you're not putting them kind of on blast of like, okay, you put yourself here in front of the whole class, you know, if you work with high school kids. So let's watch this little video. And as you watch, I want you to think about what do you see kids doing and what do you see the teacher doing and kind of what are her moves to get this going on? So let's watch this and then we'll do a little debrief.
All right, my friends, today we're going to do a close reading. But before we get into our close reading, I want us to think about our levels of engagement. This first level of engagement, disrupting. Can someone tell me what is disrupting in your own words? Richard?
When I'm working and somebody talking, disrupting.
Thank you. When you're working and someone's talking to you, it definitely stops your learning. Thank you. So in our engagement is one of the things I love to teach. A lot of times as teachers, we assume that the kids know what participating means or why they're avoiding a certain task. It's important to teach the kids how to monitor their level of engagement. Kids don't come into school knowing what it means to be invested in their learning or what it means to set goals and to seek feedback. It's not part of a natural curriculum, right? It's not part of our reading curriculum or our writing curriculum. When I learned about the levels of engagement, I thought, let me try this on with the classroom. It made such a huge difference that now it's one of my favorite things to work on.
In the activity levels of engagement, it is a continuum of different levels, all the way from not engaged, avoiding, withdrawing, to driving. Having that conversation with the kids and having them come up with examples creates such a sense of ownership with the kids and really letting them know that they are in charge. They're in charge of their engagement, which affects their learning.
You guys told me some awesome stories that were so funny about times that maybe we avoided doing some work. Zadie, tell us what's avoiding.
Avoiding is you're supposed to do a bunch of work and you're like, oh, I use the bathroom. One time in second grade, I was avoiding. I really didn't wanted to do the work. So I told the teacher my stomach is hurting really bad. I said I had a tongue because I was really scared if I was gonna fail. But my sister like that, I would tell her that I'm not ready because I trust her a lot, and I think she's a good teacher.
In that group setting, it gives kids permission to be vulnerable and to be reflective as to where they are. Wherever they are is okay, it's completely accepted. And having that group goal of, okay, we're going to get there, we'll get there together, that reiterates that sense of belonging.
Thank you, Zadie, for that honesty, right? Sometimes when we don't want to do a task, we've done that before. We might have avoided a task before. Thank you. So I want you to take a look at our levels of engagement, and I want you to set the goal for where you're going to be in today's lesson. What's the level of engagement that you're setting for yourself as a goal? Gael, where are you going to be?
Investing and participating.
Beautiful. You're going to be participating and investing. What do you have to do to reach those goals?
Asking questions and doing the work.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. You're going to ask some questions today if you don't understand from me or from the people at your table. Melanie, where do you plan to be today?
Participating.
Where are you at normally?
Drawing.
Where you're withdrawing, thinking of something else. Let me guess, soccer. Is that what you're thinking of? But not today. Today, you're going to be participating and doing the work. I love that. Once a student can identify the level of engagement that they are typically, then it's important to show them what the next step would look like. What does it look like if I'm being withdrawn in the classroom? Once they start paying attention, then they look at what's the next step up.
With the lens of equity, of accepting everybody where they are, and being able to honor those voices with kids. It's okay if you're at withdrawing. How do you see yourself moving forward? So really developing that sense of agency with kids.
When they're participating, there's some learning happening, but when they're investing in their learning, there's more learning happening. Kids now understand like how deeply it is that they're learning and how much work it takes to be successful. It's not an abstract concept. They know exactly what they need to do. Instead of disrupting, they're avoiding the task. You can do that. You can go from disrupting to using the restroom to avoid a task. And once I get them avoiding, the next step is just withdrawing. You're staying in your seat and you're thinking about something else. And then after that, you're going to pay attention. The stages are very concrete and they're very easy to follow. That really helps students move along the continuum quickly.
When I'm withdrawing, I'm thinking about when am I gonna get home or stuff like that. And then with participating, I think about questions so I can answer. If I get in the investing level, I think I will be raising my hand a lot more because I need to start answering questions for fifth grade and I need to start reading more and more.
When kids feel empowered, there is just this sense of confidence. There's a sense of ownership. There's a sense of, yes, I can do anything.
I love Sebastian, the last little young man. He was a student that was a huge game changer for him. So what were some things you noticed teacher doing, students doing? What was something you saw that it has you kind of thinking right now? In the chat. Students were active, yes. Yep. They own it. They own it. I love that ownership. What else? Explicit teaching. I love that too, right? Setting a goal for the next level, right? And the beauty of this whole thing, and I think I don't know if the principal says this, but just their behaviors went down, right? Usually what happens when kids are disruptive, we kick them out, right? And I think Nikki was saying we don't learn to read and write when we're outside the classroom. And so I love how this really is about how do we accelerate learning? We got to partner up. We got to teach kids these things that we think or we assume they come with. And it doesn't make them not good kids or good students or their parents didn't try to, it's just a piece that I think we always think kids come with, and we have to be intentional. So here's some examples. I love this. I took this picture. This was, and again, teachers take it, use it the way it's going to work. This is a first grade student. He had it, they all have it laminated on their desk. They're starting math. Allen circles where he's going to be. He goes to the restroom, comes back. His little buddy, Ashlyn, turns and says, you weren't investing. You were avoiding. You went to the bathroom. And my favorite part was that Alan turns around and he goes, well, actually, I had to go to the bathroom. And so I was like, oh, 6-year-old understands. Doesn't mean every time you go to the bathroom, you're an avoider. So I just think, wow, what a gift, right? The kids are just gonna start getting this. A lot of people will say to me, well, what do you do with the kids that are distracted? And I say we got to teach them and we got to help them for their net. How do we get them into avoiding or withdrawing? We just don't say, well, sorry, I don't know what to do with him. So this is from a different class, same school. So Jeremy, this is his, he lives a little bit too much and distracted. And so they, instead of avoiding, and so they said, this is withdrawing, I'm sorry. So they had the 3 questions. This is what you're going to do. And I feel like I'm about to get distracted. What are some things you can do? So the teacher really has made this not just a one for all, really figuring out ways to get kids to have, as we say, equity, but have that we understand they're all coming from different places. This young man, this is a different school that we've worked with, but then it takes off and these levels of engagement are all through this school campus. So let's listen to him explain to us how this works.
My name is Dominic, and I'm in 4th grade, and I'm in Harding School. There are levels of engagement in our classroom. It goes from disrupting, avoiding, withdrawing, participating, investing, and driving. Driving is the best. Disrupting is the worst. In our classroom, we assess our levels of engagement, and then we set goals on which level we want to get to and how we are going to do it.
So where are you right now in the level of engagement?
In this area, I used to be right here, but over the past few weeks, I started going from participating to it. So I'm in this range, like one of my worst days of the week when I'm like not concentrated, I could be out with drive. But when I'm feeling good, when I'm focused, I'm not driving.
So how did you do that?
I did more about seeking. I seek more feedback in the weeks that I got to driving. So now I'm mostly at either investing or driving. Yeah.
Thank you, Dominic.
Isn't that cool? He said it in his 4th grade way. It wasn't scripted, but gosh, he's thinking, right? He's thinking about what is this engagement about? So as you think of this, and we're not going to take too much time, but as you're sitting here, how could levels of engagement be adapted for your grade level or your department? Very well done. Thank you. What did you notice about teachers and students, right? How can we take this and make it work for where we're at? But what work is being done for your students to be explicitly taught to monitor their own level of engagement? A lot of times, I think I'll hear people say, well, I don't have time for this, Aida. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most important piece. If they're not engaged, we're not learning. And so things to think about. You're not going to have to share right now, but I want you to think about it because I also want to think about, why do students disengage? Why? And one of them being, obviously, we know sometimes they don't know what it means to be engaged, but there are 9 reasons, and there's different barriers that require teachers to have different approaches. I don't have enough time to go through all 9 of them, but some of them, just so you can see, students disengage, one being students' mental mindset, metacognition and self-regulation, students' fear and mistrust. Our kids come with history. They come with baggage I don't like to use, but they do come with their past, right? We also know, as we were talking about, sometimes they have insufficient prior knowledge, but it doesn't mean they don't have any prior knowledge. They have some misconception, ineffective learning strategies that they have learned, and obviously aren't seeing the success they want. They don't have a ton of transfer of learning, constraints of selective attention, and then the ninth one being constraint of mental effort, mental effort and working memory. And so this all comes from Chu and Serbin, and it's from their 2020 the cognitive challenges of effective teaching. So we have these barriers we have to be aware of. And I wish we could say, well, all my kids come with number 6, and it never happens that way. But we have to be aware. And then what do we do to hopefully remove that barrier? So we always say you can increase the precision of your teaching by aligning your efforts with the barriers you perceive in students. And so what I wanted to talk about is the challenge of constraints of selective attention. And a lot of teachers will say to me, no, they just don't want to pay attention, or they just don't want to learn. And I'm going to say, nope, nope, nope. But this is one I feel that we have to look at, and what are we doing for that barrier, this challenge? And so I'm going to show you a picture, and I want you in the chat to tell me right when you see the picture, where does your eye go? What grabbed your attention right away? So don't start checking it out, just where does your eye go? Go. Look at this picture. Where did your eye go right when I turned to this slide? The man in white. Thank you, Karen. Man in the middle, center. Okay, why? Why did it go to the center? The bright light, yes, right? The bright light, and then you start looking a little more, and you're like, oh, I see the lady in the back. Oh, I see someone in the doorway, which is kind of scary. Then you go, what's up with the guy's foot, right? We start looking at things like that. But right away, it was the colors, it was the center, it's where he's the brightest, right? So we know that we have to figure out ways to get our kids' attention. We as educators say lots of things. I've watched, I've listened to myself. I say a jillion things in about a minute. Sit down, get your books out. Okay, everyone listening? Okay. Oh, hey, Jimmy, you have to go to resource now, right? We have a lot of things. So our kids are like, am I paying attention to the kid that's going to resource? Am I getting my book right? We say a lot of things. So if you've done this before, do not ruin it for us. But what we're going to do is we're going to do an attention test. And your job is to count how many times the players with white shirts pass the ball. Okay, it's a short little video. Your job is, read what it says so you know exactly what your job is. And here we go. Don't say anything. Your job is to count, and don't put anything in the chat until I tell you to. So here we go.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count?
How many passes? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. How many did you? 14, 15, 13. Okay, okay, okay. There were 15. You're still a winner. Don't get upset. How many of you noticed the gorilla? Yes, some of you did. There was a gorilla. Nope. Right? Some did. Some of you didn't. And I always say this. So your attention, I love you, Genia. The little face. Your attention, right? You were at least close, even if you weren't exactly at 15, you're pretty close. So what happened is I told you what to do, so you knew what to pay attention to. I know someone just asked me, wants to see the gorilla. I'll show you, same video. Watch the gorilla.
This is a test of selective attention.
I'm not making it up. I know some of you think I am.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball.
So I'm going to go a little faster. Where is he? Here he comes. There's the gorilla. So this is a really great way to think about how do we make sure our kids know what to focus on. And so as you think about the engagement continuum, right, we're going to get them to use it. And then you're going to say, I want you to set goals. I want you to ask questions. But we have to tell them what they're setting goals on and what they're asking questions and what they're seeking feedback on. So I know when we think of this, some approaches we can do is increase that teacher clarity, use breaks and reorientation of strategies, and then teach students to avoid multitasking. We all try to multitask. We know research shows that multitasking doesn't exist. We think we're doing it, but we're not as focused as we think we are. So when we think of teacher clarity, we know teacher clarity is one of the most important pieces, right? Kids know what they're learning and how they're going to be successful, right? The what and the how. We have our relevance piece. I'm not going to go into too much into that right now because I know my other colleagues did. So what I'd like you to do is get a piece of paper wherever you're at. We're going to do something really quickly. What I'd like you to do is to draw a house. Draw a house really. I'm going to give you about 40 seconds to draw a house. You're going to be assessed on this house, just so you know. Okay, so because we can't switch our papers, but I would have you switch, but I'm such a good teacher, I'm going to give you some feedback. My feedback is make sure that you have added details to your house and ask yourself, is that an A paper? Is that your best effort? So take 30 seconds to kind of, with my amazing feedback, to fix or improve your house or your drawing. Okay, now here's the rules. We're going to assess it. I'm going to use the honor system. Please do not add anything, change anything as we're assessing. Please do not send me mean, don't send me mean things in the chat like not fair, not right. I'm the teacher and I'm in charge. I'm just kidding, but you know what I'm saying, okay? And please do not roll your eyes if you have your camera on. So here we go. We're going to assess our drawing. Here you go. So please keep a tally for your points. Give yourself a point if you have a chimney. Give yourself a point if you have exactly 4 windows with window panes. I don't want those little curtains. I want exactly 4. If you have 3 windows, you don't get the point. If you have 5 windows, you don't get the point. It has to be exactly 4. Give yourself a point for the center of the door at the center of the house. Give yourself 3 points if your house is yellow. Like, if we could, I know people wouldn't like me very much right now. Give me 2 points for steps or a sidewalk to the door. And give yourself 2 points for flower pots under each window. You should have a total of 10 points. Please put your scores in the chat. No squirrels. Oh, ooh. Okay, so Mackenzie, you have a high. Ooh, what happened? Ooh, ooh. Well, we have we're solid in the F range. Oh, Heidi, you have 22. Heidi, how can you have 22 points? So if you have, please put yes or a Y if you have smoke coming from your chimney in the chat. Yes, yes. Oh, of course. Look at no. Good job. Okay. Some no's, some yes, no's. Okay, be proud. Okay. If you have smoke coming, please subtract 10 points. Okay, now, oh, Mackenzie did sad face. How are you feeling? What are you feeling right now? Not great. What else? -10. You're feeling okay, bummed, frustrated. Yes. Annoyed at you. Oh, but I thought you liked me. Okay, don't put so as you think about this, this is what happens when kids don't know where they're going, what they're learning, and where and how they'll be successful. Where am I going? I'm drawing a house. How am I doing? That's my house. What's my grade? Where to next? I'm done. Right? What would have happened if I would have given you this? Would you have done better? Yes. Yes. Right? And the thing is, a lot of people will go, I don't have time to do a learning attention success criteria. And if some of us have been teaching for a long time, when we all this, in late 90s, we all typed up our standards, threw them up there, and it was like, what are we doing that for? Right? Didn't work. Then we said put objectives up there. People put objectives. The thing that was missing is kids aren't interacting with it. Kids can't do the engagement continuum if they don't know what they're learning and how they're going to be successful. And this is where it all kind of comes together. What am I learning today? Why am I learning this? And how will I know that I've been successful? Right? And this, I know people will say, well, how do I know this? Every day, you should know what you're teaching. Every day, you should know how kids are going to be successful. And relevance doesn't have to be so when you're doing your taxes in 15 years from now. It can be stuff like, you need to learn this because tomorrow we're going to be going here. And nothing makes me happier than when kids go, oh, now I know why you did that. You're welcome, is what I like to say. So teacher clarity is part of this engagement piece. So
Why do I ask the question every day, what am I learning?
Maybe because if we're like doing something and we don't know what are we learning, how are we gonna know it? How are we gonna get it right if we don't know what are we learning?
right? So how in his way, he's telling us. So, oops, I'm sorry. Listen to this young lady.
Ileana, the first question that we ask ourselves is, what am I learning? Why is that question important?
Because you have to know what you're learning to be able to learn it. Some kids get distracted, but then when they remember what they're learning, they get focused again on the topic.
Right. And that's a fourth grader telling us this. So I want you to watch this little young man interacting with these questions, student with a disability, but it just is amazing how he is so honed in to his learning.
What am I learning? You are learning to multiply a single digit number with like a multi-digit number. Why am I learning it? In the real world, there are really big numbers that you have to multiply. How I know I learned it? You all know that you learned it, that you can write the number in expanded form, can solve in two strategies, can organize your work, and can specifically ask for help.
Right? So if you have this, then that engagement, the acceleration. So lots of ways you see this, but we have to let kids be in the know. And I always say teacher clarity and student clarity complement each other. When I know and when I'm clear about what students are learning, why, and what success looks like, kids should be comfortable enough to be able to answer these questions. So this is how we accelerate learning. And we always say student clarity provides the on-ramp for student engagement. So one last thing as we think of how do we engage kids and how do we have them make goals? And we talked about challenge. And when we think of challenging tasks, they have to be appropriate. And so through the work we do, we've asked kids what they think school's about. And this is not a quote that we made up. This is what a student said. School is a place where young people go to watch older people work. And what we mean here is we got to shift that, right? We got to get kids to do the heavy lifting. And so I like to say, is there an anti-struggle mentality in reading? Or we could say, is there an anti-struggle in math? I would even just take reading out. What do you guys think? Yes or no? Do you think there is an anti-struggle mentality? Just take reading out of there. What do you think? Yes, no? In the chat. Some of you, yes, yes, yes. And this comes from us. I'm going to say not necessarily the kids, because we ask teachers and they'll say, I don't want my kids to struggle too much. I front load so they won't struggle when they read it. And so Oprah Winfrey always says, where there's no struggle, there is no strength. And I'll never forget, a student said to me, I looped with my kids kindergarten through 6th grade when I was in elementary. I was at school. I was their only teacher when I was at an elementary school. And I'll remember a student saying to me, they said, you know, Miss Allen, I really appreciate that you made me feel uncomfortable sometimes in my learning, and not uncomfortable like yelling at him. But I told him, if you're not uncomfortable, then it's not going to, I'm not doing my job and you're not doing your job. So we always talk about this Goldilocks challenge, not too hard, not too easy, right? We want it just to be correct. And so when we think about engagement, we have to think about rigor of academic tasks. And we talk about productive struggle. We have lots of conversations, but I always think that it really is about, do we understand and do we tell kids this is part of learning? This is part of your learning. And so if you've ever seen the learning pit, the one you saw before is a picture that I drew. Not good, so I'm going to give you the real one. But I always say all good learners go into the pit, and kids know that. A lot of times our kids that go in, when they're in the pit, we save them, or we feel like we've done something wrong. And so I always say that's where the best learning is happening. And when we think of amplifying our engagement with rigorous tasks, we love this word. It's a buzzword in our community of education. And so there's 2 definitions, if you could read those to yourself. As you read these, I know if I were to say which one's better, I guarantee most of us will say complexity. And I always say kids need both. They need difficulty and they need complexity. We can't live only in one. I know we all have lots of backgrounds with the DOK wheel. I've had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Webb, and he talks about the depth of knowledge isn't necessarily just a specific verb. He talks about how deeply do you have to know the content. And so this is really the whole thing, that the circle came in and everybody's used it. But he says there's things that we can keep at those levels 1 and 2, but we have to give kids the opportunity to go into levels 3 and 4. We can't keep our kids only at level 1 and 2. And he says DOK is about complexity and how many cognitive steps does it require to answer the question or to complete the task. And to me, that was like, that changed, because I was like, what word do I pick? I don't know. And so as we think of this, this is from Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry's work, and they talk about these quadrants, and they say there are things that kids need to live in low difficulty, low complexity. Learning to read, this is where they live. We do not give them Shakespeare and say, good luck to you, right? We also know there's things to build stamina, right? Reading longer than 2 minutes, research projects, right? Kids need that. Kids need strategic thinking, right? That metacognition. And kids need struggle, right? High difficulty, high complexity. And so when we look at this, and I'll talk to teachers, and teachers will say to me, well, my kids can't go into the top quadrants. And I get really upset because that's not fair. We don't have that much power and we shouldn't. Kids need it all, because when we decide to have them try some strategic thinking and it's all of a sudden like, okay, we're going to try it, it's really not going to happen. I myself went to the gym one time. Not my thing, just kidding, but yes, not my thing. But what I learned was I got on the treadmill and that's where I was going to live. And this trainer came over and he said, "Hey, what are you trying to do?" I'm like, "Well, I'm trying to get in shape, lose some weight, da 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 da." And he said, "Well, I'm glad that you're doing your cardio, but if you want to build some strength, you're going to need to do some weights or some machines." And to me, I feel like the same deal. If we want our kids to also have strength, we need to give them some opportunities to go into those top pieces of the quadrants. So we need to work with our thinking about what, not every lesson is going to go into the top quadrants. I know this, but we really want to be intentional and think about, do I do this with my kids? So this is a very simple thing. How do I design challenging tasks? From taking it from open to closed to open, from information to understanding, from tell to ask, and then from procedure to problem solving. And this is all adapted from transforming tasks, designing tasks where students go. It's by the government of South Australia, but it's out there. And I think it's just fantastic just to think about, how do I take my kids from one place to the other? So I know that this was hit upon, and I love it because I think we're pushing this. All of us have talked about it, making sure we give kids the opportunity to have strategic thinking, to have struggle. They have to be able to work with each other. You don't do that work on your own. And so these are the 5 indicators for productive group work. We know lots of different protocols. One of my favorites is reciprocal teaching, getting kids to teach each other. This is just a protocol, lots of different ways to do this. And I'm just showing you different ways. This is from one that I actually made. But how do we get kids into the driver's seat, looking at the text we use, looking at how are we really assessing our own assignments and tasks, and is there opportunities to kids to go into that challenge? I do not have time to show you this, but I did work with a school, and we got the entire school doing reciprocal teaching, and second graders took on the work, third graders, fourth graders, and it's been amazing to see how that challenge has become part of what they do. So Doug Fisher says, when you move to higher levels of engagement, where kids drive the learning, where they set their goals, they monitor their progress, they reflect on what they've been learning, that's when you see them show up and participate. So with that, I always say, to have an impact, we have to put kids in the driver's seat of their learning. And with that, this is my email and my, it's not Twitter anymore, X handle, I don't even know. But thank you so much for, I know at 11 o'clock in the morning, it's always a little more difficult, but thank you. And this has been a fantastic conference. So thank you for letting me be part of it.
Thank you so much, Aida, for sharing your work and your passion with us. Engagement is a game changer for students to thrive. Just thinking about using that continuum and how it empowers that self-regulation and for students to take ownership over their own learning. And the videos that you shared, seeing students in action doing that and being reflective, are so incredibly powerful in this work. And then shifting to the teacher clarity with the success criteria, those are also creating moments that matter for our students. So thank you so much.